No, you told it.
All right. Remember this Sunday at 12:45 we are having our meeting about the Colorado trip next summer. So that's after, we've got a potluck after church this Sunday. That's from 11:45 to 12:45. After that potluck, we've got a meeting at 12:45. Yes?
Okay, I'm not going to be here this Sunday, but my mom's already gone to the meeting like several times with my sisters. Is that all right?
You'll be fine.
Okay.
We'll get you the form. So what we're going to do, for those of you that have never been to Colorado, that includes some of our 6th graders who aren't here tonight, we just talk about basically what is camp, kind of what it looks like for our travel. We've got some Rainbow Trail brochures. Registration is due January 1st, so we want to make sure that we get everybody's registration in on time. That way we can all go together. So that's kind of what the meeting will be about. We'll go into more detail Sunday.
If you went last year, do you still need to go?
It'd be good even if you went last year and you're able to come to the meeting, it'd be good if you could still take part in it.
You can go if you want to
I can go.
Yep, you sure can.
Cool. That's cool. That's cool.
So 12:45 on Sunday. Also, remember to keep doing your sermon notes. If you're here on Sunday, please make sure that you do those. Anytime you're in church in worship on a Sunday, you can do those. You can also do them when you're here Christmas Eve. We've got next spring, the Easter season. We've got all kind of worship opportunities. Yes.
Can I get a pen to write down the website?
No.
I miss like so much information in church. I can't keep track.
BethanyFredericksburg.com.
Can I have a pen? Because I
Here, I'll text you. Even I could remember that.
We'll get it to you. We'll get it to you.
I know that the ice barn is coming. Are we doing any like ice skating or not?
Yes. Wednesday, so the first Wednesday. The first Wednesday in December, I believe that's December 3rd, we are having a gathering that evening. You'll come here after school, and then we're going to go ice skating across the street at the ice spot.
That's 10 days away from my birthday.
We don't know what they're charging this year for prices, so I don't know what to tell you for how much money to bring, because they change that sometimes depending on what their costs are. So we'll let you know as soon as we know that. Next week is our last class session of the semester. We've still got other gatherings, but we will finish out the Old Testament next week. Remember that if you've missed any sessions, be sure to go back and watch those online. We'll be sure to have those. We're missing a couple of makeup worksheets. I'll get those online as soon as I can. Make sure you've got your makeup work done before we go into the next semester.
Do you have the one from the walk-in?
We have not gotten that one up yet.
Okay, that's the only one I'm missing.
Yeah, we know that we don't have a video for that yet.
Okay.
So we're not quite sure how we're gonna. We'll put some kind of video and worksheet together that you can do at home. Maybe do some Bible reading with your parents and catch up on that one.
I'm confused about the worksheet.
Uh-huh.
Do you pick it up here or do you do it online?
You print it.
So you print it off. So when you click on that makeup worksheet, you can print it off, fill it out, sign it, and bring it back.
I thought that you had to pick it up here.
Nope, it's all online.
If I would have known that, I would have been done by now. Dang it.
It's all online.
Actually, you know the website.
What's online?
Yeah, that too.
The makeup work. We'll talk to you about that.
Oh.
All right, so we're gonna pick up tonight where we left off last week. All right. Anybody remember where we left off last week?
Did we leave off, with that guy with like the long hair, and if he cuts it,
Oh yes.
yeah, him.
Okay, Samson, that was the video we watched at the very beginning of our session.
That's Samuel.
Samson.
Samson.
Well, yeah, we talked about David.
Talked about David a little bit.
Yeah, it was David, not Samson.
We talked about watch that video.
We watched the video.
Wait, who is David's son?
Solomon.
Solomon, that's what it is.
Okay.
Wait, what are we talking
We talked about the 3 different types of kings. There was the great king, there was wise king. Oh, I remember that.
First king.
First king.
We talked about the king. Saul is the first king anointed of Israel. David is the great king. What is David remembered for?
His wisdom.
No, that's his son.
That's who?
Solomon.
Solomon, yeah. David's remembered for what? Raise your hands.
Popularity. No.
David and Goliath.
Okay, David fought Goliath
And
at
he
the
was
very
like,
beginning.
yeah, I don't know, the people liked him, and he
Prosperity.
ran the country, right?
Me.
Yeah, David.
Oh,
looks-
he
yeah.
He played music.
David played music.
Yes.
He
Yes.
not very good
Some of David's music we still have in the Bible. Where?
Psalms.
Psalms. That's right. We went over Psalm.
He also
21. Raise your hands, please.
He united the tribe.
That's right. David united the kingdom. So at the time before David, you had the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, Judah and Israel. Under David, he unites them. He brings the capital to Jerusalem. He does lots of good for the sake of Israel at the height of its power.
he ordered Bathsheba's husband on the front line,
That's right.
and he got killed so he could marry. So that was committing adultery.
Yep. Not one of David's best moments. All right. All right, so David's son Solomon, he's the one known as the wise king. He's the one that finally gets the temple built. But as we saw in the video, at the end of Solomon's reign as king, he doesn't follow some of his own wisdom. What are some of the things that he does that are a disgrace, that he falls away from God? Y'all remember?
He gets full of himself. It's like he gets a whole bunch of money and just like blows it.
Yep. So his ego gets really big, right? He's so wise, he's so popular that he gets full of himself. He builds himself a really big house, which doesn't seem to be a very good use of communal funding.
Did he marry a lot of people?
Yeah, he had 700 plus wives,
Oh,
which is problematic for anybody. So not one of his best moments. One of the things that Solomon also does, so he builds a temple for God, for the people, but he also starts worshiping a bunch of idols. He is influenced by other gods and goddesses all over the place. Okay, so we continue this week. I want you to turn in your Bibles. We're learning different resources to use. So right at the beginning on page 30, I want you to turn to page 30 in the very front of your Bible.
32.
I want you to turn to page 30.
Bible history times.
I got 32.
All right, everybody there? Page 30?
What is this?
Everybody said...
What?
Everybody sees the timeline?
Yes, sir.
So, this is a great resource to help us to understand what's going on. Remember I said a couple of weeks ago, the Old Testament doesn't exactly go in chronological order all of the time. If we're looking especially the history of Israel, we've got the book of Kings, we've got 1 Kings and 2 Kings, we have 1 Chronicles and 2 Chronicles. Those stories overlap. They're told from different perspectives. And so when we try to put the Old Testament together chronologically, especially in the prophetic books like Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Amos, those things all happen sometimes at the same time. So let's take a look at this timeline. I'll point out some things. You see the large red titles like Time of Patriarchs and Matriarchs, United Kingdom? So that's kind of a bracket of the major event that's going on in the history of Israel. So let's look on page 30, right at the edge of the right-hand side. You see United Kingdom under 1000 BCE. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Kind of in the top of the page. So 1000 BCE, that BCE stands for before the Common Era. That's the way it's noted now. Then you'll see United Kingdom. So Saul, first king of Israel, 1020. David takes Jerusalem as capital in the year 1000. All right. You'll go just down the timeline where we left off last week. The kingdom starts dividing. We're going to talk more about that tonight. Kingdom divides into Israel and Judah in 922. You'll see the next bullet point down. Solomon rules kingdom, builds temple, 961. Remember, before we get to the Common Era, it's a countdown. So you'll notice at one point we go from 2500 BCE to 2000 to 1500 to 1250. So we're working backwards towards the year 1. And then now we work forward to where we are 2014 away from the first year of the Common Era.
Okay, so how did they know that this happened at this time? Like,
So-
where did they
had
start?
calendars.
Because if they started, shouldn't they have just started from like 1 year and then 2 and then 3 and then 4?
So the way
didn't do it this way.
the way they're calculating is they're using probably calendars from lots of different cultures and lots of different civilizations. And at some point, somebody decided this is where we're just going to restart the calendar. Probably the Roman Empire did that, and that's the notation that we use. And so at some point, it's got to work backwards to the year 1 and then 1 to where we are now. Some of these dates are estimates. We're putting together histories from lots of different cultures, and sometimes we just don't know. There's lots of, again, putting a calendar like this together, you're talking different languages, different units of measuring how long a year is. Some of these factors are very different than how we understand time to be now. So lots of work, lots of educated guesses go into making a calendar like this. Next part I want to show you, if you'll see, there's that white line right in the middle of each page. Underneath that line, you've got names of important biblical characters that are alive and working during this time. What I want to focus on, kind of right in the middle of the book, you'll see divided kingdom under 900 BCE.
Elijah and
Yeah, you see in red Elijah and Elisha. Those are two of the prophets. We're going to watch a video about them in just a little bit. Elijah and Elisha are prophets during the time of the divided kingdom. We're going to talk about what that means for us this evening. If you go a couple over, you'll see Amos and Hosea, and then first Isaiah and Micah. And then you go over, you'll get a much longer list of people. So when you turn kind of towards the middle and the end of the Old Testament and you get to Zephaniah and Nahum and Habakkuk and Jeremiah, Ezekiel, all of those books from the prophets that we have, you can turn back to page 30 and 31 and think, oh, this is when they lived. This is what's going on in the history of Israel when they were ministering as prophets. If you'll turn the page, we actually get into the New Testament, and that's where we'll be focusing when we come back together next fall. But I wanted to point out this tool. This is another great tool that they put into these study Bibles that help us to understand history. Our concept of time, I mean, we think, oh my gosh, 10 years, 15 years seems like a long time. Some of the stories that we're talking about now are 4,000, 5,000 years old. So a long, long time ago. All right. So last week, we left off with the divided kingdom. So that's right at the end of Solomon's reign. So let's turn to page 545. I want to point out another great chart in your books. 545. This is like a resource lesson for you.
Is this all we're going to be doing? Because if so, I'll be really happy.
Learning the resources in the Bible?
Yeah.
It's fun, right? There's a lot of information in this book when you dig into it.
Did someone ever write like a summary on it?
Oh, that'd be awesome.
A summary on the Bible would be like
There are lots of
100
summaries.
pages.
Is it like
Better than over
100-page. Some things happened. Jesus was born. Jesus did things. Jesus died. We are here today.
No, you forgot he
Zep-
resurrected.
That's right.
Resurrected.
Everybody on page 545?
Yeah.
All right, so here we have the kings of Judah and Israel. What we have in the books of 1 Kings and 2 Kings, 1 Chronicles and 2 Chronicles is kind of a history of the kings of Israel. So, that very first section, United Kingdom, we have Saul, who is the first king. We have David, who is the great king. And we have Solomon, who is the wise king. All right, we have those three. After Solomon's reign, the kingdoms that were united under David, north and south, are once again split and divided. Everything starts to fall apart for Israel. And so we have Judah and Israel. And underneath each of those columns, you've got the list of kings. All right? We could go through and we could talk about each one of these kings in turn, but that takes a lot of time and gets pretty complicated. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it in chunks. We're going to read some stories from the prophets who lived during these times, reflecting on what's going on. All right? So I just want you to, we may reference 545 a couple of times just to kind of get straight, okay, what's going on? Because this history is very complicated. I think on one of these columns we've got 14 separate kings, and I think 9 of them were assassinated by the people. There's a series of like 6 years where 4 kings get assassinated. It's not a very happy time.
That's awesome.
All right.
Awesome.
So,
Question.
yes.
Why do they spell like names like that? Like there's 2 A's after.
So when we translate these names out of Hebrew, I think they're all in Hebrew. The languages don't match. So Hebrew didn't have a vowel system back in this time. So we had to go in and add the vowels. So where you've got like a double A or a double vowel, that's called a diphthong. You may study those at some point. That's the way we figure that's how you pronounce it. Because we don't actually know. Again, these kings were operating 4,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago.
Can I read about the first king?
Not right now.
Can I read the first king's name? No.
Yes, what is the first king's name?
Baasha.
Can you pronounce that?
Never mind.
Wait, which one is it?
Alright, so if you look at the first king under each one, we've got Jeroboam and
The first
Rehoboam.
king's name is Jeroboam.
Yep. Alright,
I'm just a little confused on the videos. Whenever David and Solomon died, they showed them all old. Even though, actually, based on the timeline, David was only 40 and Solomon was only 48.
yeah. So we're dealing with, we got to translate history a little bit. We got to think, okay, at that time, they may have marked years at a different length of days. Also, some of the dates, so if you look at David 1010 to 970, those aren't the dates of his birth and his death. Those are the dates of when he was anointed as king, and then when he was king no more, when God anointed somebody else. So when we see dates like I'm 1985 to now 2014, 1985 is when I was born. David's not born in 1010. That's probably when he was anointed as king. So we have to, again, think about, okay, how are they reading timelines? So all of this list, like for Rehoboam, the first one, 922 to 915. He's probably, I don't know, I'm guessing in his 30s or 40s when he's anointed. And his reign is not all that long. It's just 7 years. There were some good kings in this period of time. We'll talk about those. All right, so now we're going to go back. We're going to review a little bit. So flip a couple of pages to 567. This is where we left off last time.
You ready? What?
Page 567. We're in 1 Kings chapter 11.
Oh, look there.
No, you didn't.
No.
You should start here and go that way.
No, we should start right here because I'm the front row. And then you go that
Okay,
way.
let's go back.
All right, this is the last thing that we read last week, so I'm just going to summarize it for you. All right, so I'm going to point out a couple of things. So, somebody pointed out earlier, Solomon had lots of wives. That's that first. King Solomon loved many foreign women along with the daughter of Pharaoh. And then we get a list of them.
Oh, Solomon had.
Solomon's got lots
All of them?
and lots of wives.
Wait, where's the names?
Moabite,
By
Ammonite,
11.
Edomite.
Oh.
All right. So this section is recounting kind of things when things for Solomon start to go bad. All right. These wives come from all over. They come from different cultures and different people groups, and they bring their own gods and goddesses to the table. So one of the things that Solomon does wrong is he starts building idols to these other gods and goddesses. He starts ignoring which commandment?
First
The
commandment.
first one, you shall have no other gods before me. So that's when it really starts to fall apart for him. He loses sight of the focus. If you'll turn the page and look specifically at verse 9, that first paragraph down. Eli, if you'll read verse 9 for us.
Then the Lord was angry with Solomon, because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice.
Kagan, if you'll pick up 10.
And I commanded him concerning this matter that he should not follow other gods, but he did not observe what the Lord commanded.
Therefore the Lord said to Solomon, since this has been your mind, and you have not kept my covenant and my statutes, statutes
Yep.
that I have commanded you, I will surely tear the kingdom from you and give it to your servant.
Alright, Jairus first.
Me?
Yep.
Yeah, me. Here. Yet for the sake of your father David, I will not do it in your lifetime. I will tear it out of the hand of your son.
Alright,
I
ready?
will not, however, tear away the entire kingdom. I will give one tribe to your son, for the sake of my servant David, and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen.
Alright. So here's where we get kind of the start of that divided kingdom. What God says, I'm not going to do this during your lifetime. So after Solomon dies is when the kingdom splits. So again, kind of a recurring theme that we're going to see is that the kings continually fall away from following the Lord. That's like the biggest argument that God has against the people. You've turned away from me. I've made these covenants with you. I've made these promises. I've tried to bring you into a good relationship and establish my kingdom, but your leadership is bad. The people also, further, it's not just the leaders, it's the people themselves. They keep turning away. And so in this complicated mess of two divided kingdoms and lots of kings, enters the role of the prophets. And to introduce the prophets, one of the more famous ones is Elijah and Elisha. And we're going to watch a video on those fellas now.
Close our Bible.
I'll leave it open. You can hit the lights.
I like it.
No, I can't see it.
In Elijah's time, Israel was split over who to worship, Yahweh or Baal. Baal worship was extremely popular. It was much more extravagant and convenient. Even the king of northern Israel, Ahab, endorsed it. He married Jezebel, a Baal worshipper, and built a shrine to Baal, where priests prayed to their false gods and sacrificed infants. The Lord was very displeased.
Let's do this.
Elijah conveyed the details of God's curse. 3 years of drought. Knowing this would displease the king and queen, God recommended that Elijah relocate to the middle of nowhere. Because of the drought, it was a rather difficult time to be homeless in the wilderness. However, God made certain Elijah did not starve. On one occasion, the Lord sent ravens to feed him.
How is that even possible?
It's not. Through God, all things are possible.
Meanwhile, King Ahab and his wife Jezebel, out of frustration with the prolonged drought and famine, were having all the prophets put to death. So, of course, God sent Elijah.
All right. What are we doing now?
God told Elijah to challenge Ahab and Jezebel's priests of Baal to a showdown at Mount Carmel.
Yep.
Time for the ultimate biblical.
The rules were simple. Whichever side could summon their God to end the 3-year drought would be the winner. It was Elijah versus 450 Baal priests. However, due to budget limitations, the 450 Baal priests will be represented by these 4 priests and a goat. The Baal priests sacrificed a bull, then started crying to Baal.
Baal! Baal!
but there was no answer. Elijah couldn't help himself.
Louder! Maybe your God is napping.
Then the priests began cutting themselves.
What?
The priests began cutting themselves.
Oh, good. Stab yourselves. Maybe that'll get your God's attention.
This unique strategy also proved to be ineffective.
Hello? Anyone home?
Now it was Elijah's turn. But first, he decided to raise the stakes. Elijah had 12 large jars of water poured onto his bowl. Elijah called to God.
Answer me, O Lord, so that these people will know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again.
God's fire came down, burning the bowl, wood, rocks, and evaporating every drop of water. Elijah, furious at how his people had turned away from Yahweh, had all 450 Baal priests slaughtered. After this, Queen Jezebel vowed to see Elijah killed, and so Elijah was forced into hiding again. Elijah was beginning to question his effectiveness as a prophet. Despite everything, the Israelites refused to turn their hearts back to God. Elijah began to feel rather depressed. He lay down beneath a broom tree and asked the Lord to kill him. Instead, the Lord sent an angel who told him to get up, eat, and do the Lord's bidding.
All right.
Elijah got up, ate, and did the Lord's bidding, which in this case was to hide in yet another cave. After a 40-day journey, he reached the new cave. Upon arriving, God told him to go outside.
All right.
Because God was about to pass by. God then sent a wind, an earthquake, a fire. But Elijah knew that God was none of these things. And then there was silence. And in the midst of the silence, God spoke in a still small voice, asking Elijah what he was doing there.
Well, let's see. I have been a devout follower of the Lord. The Israelites have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets. I am the only one left, and they're looking to kill me too.
The still small voice assured Elijah that those who had turned away from the Lord would soon be dealt with, and that Elijah was to anoint a farmer named Elisha as his replacement.
Fair enough.
Shush. Read in your mind.
Here you go, kid. Come on, kid. We've got work to do.
Elisha, realizing the significance of this gesture, promptly sacrificed his oxen to the Lord and began following Elijah immediately.
Hey, are you coming or are you gonna just pray all day?
With his replacement selected, Elijah was nearing retirement. But first, God needed him to tie up a few loose ends. Ahab and Jezebel had taken it upon themselves to frame a man named Naboth with a crime that was punishable by stoning. All so that they could lay claim to Naboth's vineyard. This was the final straw. Elijah cursed them, saying that they would be eaten by dogs. Ahab repented so he was not killed by dogs. Jezebel, however, was sometime later thrown out a window and eaten by dogs. Not long after this, God finally allowed Elijah to retire and also provided him with one of the most memorable exits ever recorded. A climactic ascension into the heavens on a fiery chariot.
Well, toodaloo.
Copyright.
No, okay.
No. Spark House.
2011.
Hey, you forgot about 2011.
No, it's in
Nathan.
Will somebody, here, if we hit the light on your way out. Thank
Bye,
you.
Paris. I love you.
Even they
Bye,
said,
Paris. Love you. Love you, Paris.
Bye, Paris. I love you.
All right. Okay. So that kind of is a flash forward, a very short telling of the ministry of the prophets Elijah and Elisha. All right. Names sound very similar, but they're two different prophets. To show you where they are, let's turn to 1 Kings. It's just a few pages from where we were. 1 Kings chapter 18. All right. Again, there's a lot going on in the Old Testament, so some of the stuff I'm giving you tonight are just signposts. These are some really great and dynamic stories. If you're looking for something good to read, go back and read these things, but we can't obviously get to all of them in the time allotted. So we're just giving you signposts and tools to use to engage these stories. So, page 580.
Wait, so I'm gonna read something?
I'm just going to point out some stories to you.
Oh.
All right. A story that's actually told in the Gospels. It comes up in the ministry of Jesus. It's at the top of page 8. The widow of Zarephath. All right. This story is told by Jesus when they question his ministry. The people are wondering, why aren't you doing things for us, your own people? And he reminds them that even Elijah did ministry to an outsider. Jesus has been doing a lot of ministry work with those who are Gentiles, those who are outside of the Jewish covenant. And that causes some concern for his own followers and for the Pharisees. And so this story comes up, the widow of Zarephath. Even though Elijah is a Jewish prophet, he ministers to someone who is outside of the covenant, showing that all people are God's people. So that's a story that comes up in the New Testament.
Is that Elijah or Elisha?
Jah with a J.
Okay.
This is still the ministry of Elijah with a J. All right? So here when chapter 18 starts, we have Elijah's message to Ahab. Remember, Ahab's that king with the funky crown and the A on his hat. His wife is Jezebel. And their big crime is that Jezebel is a Baal worshiper, and that's problematic for the people.
Wait, so Baal's a different god?
A different god. Yeah.
No.
Probably an agricultural
Lord, it's one of those
deity.
that has 2 A's.
Yep. One of those weird names from the Old Testament. All right, so the message from Elijah to Ahab is to stop worshiping Baal. You have led all of the people astray. You've killed the prophets of the Lord. Stop worshiping Baal. And Ahab doesn't listen. So then we come to one of my favorite Old Testament stories, Elijah's triumph over the priests of Baal. So on Mount Carmel, you've got the great showdown. The video pointed out this is in 3 years of drought. We who live in Central Texas, we know droughts. When droughts happen, bad things happen. There's not enough water for crops, not enough water for animals, not enough water for people. Droughts do what to us?
Kill us.
They kill us, ultimately. They hurt us.
What? Who killed us?
They can.
I didn't know that. I was just kind of joking.
When you don't have water, things tend to die.
What?
Yeah,
Sometimes.
land
Boring.
animals
We have
and
the
we
ocean.
can't live.
Well, ocean's saltwater.
So we can boil it all.
And then that would be pretty depressed.
All right, so 3 years of drought. 3 years of drought is the punishment at that point for worshiping Baal. They won't turn away. And so in the midst of this drought, there's the showdown on Mount Carmel that picks up in verse 20.
Caramel.
All right, Mount Carmel. Sounds funny, right? So it's Elijah on one side, last remaining prophet of the Lord, 450 Baal priests. The Baal priests begin to dance and call out to Baal, and Baal does not show up. All right, turn the page.
What does that mean? Their God's not real?
Pretty much. All right.
It's a process.
So Elijah rebuilds the altar of the Lord down there, starting in verse 30. Says to all the people, "Come closer to me." And the people came down to him. First he repaired the altar of the Lord that had been thrown down. He took 12 stones, according to the number of tribes of the son of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord came, saying, "Israel shall be your name." So he repairs the altar. All right, at that point, the worship of the Baal priest had failed. Elijah prays to God. So let's pick up in verse 36.
Wait, who's king at the moment?
Ahab.
Ahab.
Yep, that was the guy in the video. Big guy, funny crown with the A on it.
With the red under his armpits.
Yep. Did we leave off with you, River, reading?
No, yeah.
Okay,
he
so-
read last, then
all right,
it's
Cora.
Cora's turn.
We're in verse 36 on page 582. Pick up in verse 36.
At the time of the offering of the oblation, the prophet Elisha came near and said, "O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known to this day that you, God in Israel, I am your servant, and that I have done all things in your bidding."
Answer me, O Lord, answer me, so that this people may know what you know that you. Wait, I keep on losing this spot.
It's alright.
Know that you.
I keep on moving. No, not you.
Oh.
Yes.
Wait. Oh, answering so that these people may know what that you, O Lord our God, and that you have turned their hearts back.
Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering, the wood, the stones, and the dust, and even lapped up the water that was in the tent.
When all the people saw it, they fell on their faces and said, "The Lord indeed is God, the Lord indeed is God."
Elijah said to them, "Seize the prophets of Baal. Do not let one of them escape." Then they seized them, and Elijah brought them down to the
Wadi Kishon.
Wadi Kishon and killed them there.
Alright. Let's stop there. Alright, so here Elijah prays, and this is what a prophet does. One of the roles of the prophet is to bring the people back into relationship with God. And so here Elijah prays on behalf of the people. Answer me so that the people may know. The people have turned away. God has not given up on them. Elijah is trying to bring them back into relationship. We're going to see as we read the prophets that that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to reestablish these covenants, to bring the people back into relationship with God. Remind them, hey, you've messed up. You've started worshiping other people. You've got distractions. You've ignored the covenants. Those aren't good things. You've ignored the commandments. Let's get back into right relationship. All right? Next prophet who's alive at this time, we're going to turn further back in the Old Testament, Amos. And see if you can find Amos.
What page?
I don't know, we're going to find Amos.
Amos.
Find the beginning of Amos.
How do you find it? Like
You look.
So one way, if you look at your Bibles, look at the very bottom.
Yeah.
See where the book is listed on the very bottom?
Oh, yeah.
That's one place where you can tell what book you're in, and when you're trying to find one, you can flip the bottom pages and find it that way.
I wish they went in alphabetical order.
I always get confused in that one too because I'm used to seeing it at the top.
It's like
No, it looks like you didn't find it.
I did find it.
Oh,
Found it!
I just found it.
What
What
page
is
is?
it?
Dang it! No, I didn't.
1,400.
Found it!
It was one. It was in the, I was going backwards.
1476.
I did find it.
1476. Alright, 1476.
I'm good at this. No, you have to do this. Let me see it. Where is it?
Yes, I found it. I knew I found it.
That is so gross.
Oh, there it is. Nahum, Micah, Jonah.
Is everybody on page 14?
76.
76. All right. So let's take a look at this. River, you were asking about summaries earlier. This is a good place to talk about those summaries. Each book of the Bible in this study Bible starts off in just this way. They had different scholars write summaries of each book. All right. Actually, a couple of them were professors that I studied under at the seminary I went to, which is kind of cool. I can't remember off the top of my head which introductions they wrote. But if you look, so you've got Amos, title of the book, name of the prophet. Here, background file. This gives you some information on the book. It kind of gives you the background, who the author might have been, when it might have been written. Next category, what's the story? This is an overview. It's a summary of what's going to take place in that book. What are the main themes? Hold on. What's happening in this particular book? You go to the next page, and at the top there it says the book of Amos can be outlined as followed. All right, so if you're looking maybe for a particular story or a theme, it's got it here. Introduction. Oracles condemning Judah, Israel, and neighboring nations. Oracles against Israel. Visions of judgment. Vision of a restored kingdom. So that's what the pattern of the book is going to be. And then there's a section, what's the message? All right, so if you ever want to know, what is this particular book about? It's written. We've got a good summary. There's some really good scholarship behind these writings. Just another way to help us understand Scripture. All right, so where did we leave off reading? Who read?
Shelby.
No. Jessen read, I think. All right, Daisy. We're going to read verse 1. Chapter 1, verse 1 on the next page. Everybody follow along.
The words of Amos, who was among the shepherds of Tekoa, which he saw concerning Israel through the days of King Uzziah of Judah, and in the days of King Jeroboam,
There you go.
son of Joash of Israel, who years before the earthquake.
All right, there you go. So, words of the Lord, words of Amos. All right, kind of a notation. This is the prophet. All right. Oh, look. From last time.
You ever read that?
Is everybody in their grade?
All right. So,
Don't let it keep going, it's gonna get beat the same people.
okay. So, all the prophetic books kind of follow a similar pattern. These prophets lived at a specific time. They ministered during a specific time. But sometimes their words weren't recorded, like they don't have a scribe sitting there and writing down, okay, this is what Amos said. You know, we're going to date it November 11th or November 12th, 2014, and then start recording what Amos said. The words are remembered afterwards, all right? So they're written down. And so all of the prophetic books have a particular theme to them. They all begin kind of words of so-and-so, all right? So, in this particular case, we've got Amos. So these are the words of Amos. Another book it's going to be, this is the word given to Jeremiah. This is the word of Isaiah. There's a particular pattern, right? Go back to the top of that page and see that outline. Introduction, that's what words of. The next part, we've got oracles condemning. So the next movement of the book, we get judgment. All right? All of the prophets have words of judgment. And they all fall into, it divides it up a little bit deeper there. But really, it's judgment against Israel / Judah, who are the people of God. So we'll just say people of God. So, introduction, judgment. Woe to you, Israel, for you have turned away from the Lord your God. You have broken the commandments. You have broken the covenant. it gets kind of repetitive and at times it gets really vicious. All right? There are some very vicious things. Harsh words, prophets can be kind of blunt. They don't hold anything back. All right? We're going to read some of those words here in just a little bit and you'll see what I'm saying. But judgment. First of all, it's judgment to Israel, God's own people. All right? Then, we don't just leave it at Israel. The prophets speak words to other nations. All right? So other groups of people, woe to you, Egypt. Woe to you, the Moabites. Woe to you, whoever. All right? Judgment oracles against other nations. The third movement, if we're going to keep this pattern basic, the third movement is hope. All right? Because at the end of the day, the goal of the prophet, the goal of God speaking through the prophet, I should say, that's a little more specific. God is speaking through these prophets, is to judge. This is where you've messed up. This is where you've fallen away. But to give hope. That's the ultimate promise that we have from God. We see that pretty clearly in Isaiah. I'm going to bring you out of exile. O Israel, I have remembered you, my people. I'm going to send someone. I'm going to send the Messiah. We'll talk about that a little bit. But they're always words of hope. So if you want a basic outline, introduction, judgment, hope. That's how prophets work. So we've read, Daisy read for us 1:1, words of Amos. Dates it a little bit. One of the shepherds of Tekoa. In the Israel in the days of King Uzziah of Judah, and in the days of Jeroboam of Israel. So that's the kings in each of the northern and southern kingdoms. All right?
Smells like really strong.
That is very strong.
Can y'all smell that extra marker?
Oh.
I like the colors.
Y'all don't like the strong, pungent...
These are yoga pants.
River does.
What?
Alright, so let's turn to chapter 5, Amos chapter 5. These words will hopefully sound familiar because we read them in church on Sunday.
When?
Sunday.
Oh.
Okay, we're going to hear them tonight.
Wait, what's going on Sunday?
Chapter 5, verse 18.
First there. No. First there.
Can I start?
Yes.
It's the jumping pillow.
Alright, is everybody chapter 5, verse 18 on page 1485. We're going to pick up with you, Dalton, but let's let everybody get there.
What page? Can I read it?
Okay, we're gonna address this really quick. Yes, the marker smells. Good. Okay, now Travis has a low odor, so we're not gonna smell anymore.
Okay, good.
Let's look in your Bibles.
What page is it?
Can I read it?
1485.
Thank you.
Other way. There you go. The day of the Lord, a dark day. Alright, Dalton, pick up, start with 18.
Alas for you who desire the day of the Lord. Why do you want the day of the Lord? It is darkness, not light.
As if someone fled from a lion and was met by a bear, or went into the house and rushed ahead against the wall, and was bitten by a snake.
And is not the day of the Lord darkness, not what? Oh.
Oh my gosh. That person, I have no idea where
I'm
you're
right here.
What page are you on?
I'm on the page, sorry.
What page?
1485.
Oh. Oh.
Okay.
I know where we are now.
Yeah. Good.
Alright, Megan, nice and loud for us.
It's not the day of the Lord.
Is not the day of the Lord darkness, not light and gloom, with no brightness on it.
I despise your festivals, and I take no delight in your solemn assemblies.
Eli.
Yep, Eli. 22.
Even though you offer me burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them. The offerings of well-being of your fatted animals, I will not look upon.
Take away from me the noise of your songs. I will not listen to the melody of your hearts.
But let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream.
All right. So here, what would you say is the tone of this passage?
The tone? Dark and gloomy.
Dark and gloomy. Does God seem happy?
Nope. No. Sarcasm.
Why would you say God is not happy? What are some words?
Like, I'm not gonna accept it.
I'm not gonna accept your offer.
I will
Alright.
not look upon. I hate.
Yeah, it's a pretty strong word, right? I hate, I despise your festivals, and I take no delight in your solemn assemblies. All right? The offerings are unacceptable. Okay? This is part of that judgment movement in the prophetic book of Amos. Okay? Amos is still written, the kingdoms are divided, but it's a time of relative prosperity still for the people of Israel. The judgment of Amos, let's look at that last line again, verse 24. Will you read that for us again? Yes.
Me.
Me?
Oh, me?
Yes.
Okay. But let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream.
All right, what seems to be the call in that verse? What is God looking for?
Righteousness.
Righteousness. And what else?
Justice.
Justice. Okay.
And let it, a lot of
So we can discern from that the people, it seems like they're worshiping. They've got festivals, they've got songs, they're still doing offerings. But those offerings don't seem to be leading them into a communal relationship. God is looking for justice here and righteousness. Justice among the people. Right? Righteousness. That's a big word.
Like direct praying to them.
What's that?
Like direct praying instead of just like, oh, here's an offering.
Some direct prayer could be. Righteousness, if we're going to take a simple meaning of it, it's a big word. It literally is to be in right relationship. We hear righteousness, think right relationship, or good relationship, or whole relationship. That's what God is looking for. Anybody know where we might see these words today? If you've ever heard of where these might be written.
Oh yeah, me. Like whenever, like, police, they follow that, like, they have to be righteous.
Okay.
And they have to make sure there's justice.
Okay, so our peace officers,
Like,
they're
like
trying to
not only
establish
police,
those
but,
things.
Like, anyone who protects, like army.
Okay.
Navy. Like,
So we've got people that do serve and protect. We had Veterans Day yesterday. We honored those who have served and protected. All right? These words are also for us. All right? We can think specifically, there are groups of people that do these things, but we're called to live in right relationship with God and with one another. We're called to be actors in this thing called righteousness. We're called to be people of justice. Right? There's a big monument in Dallas to Martin Luther King Jr., civil rights activist in the 1960s. There's a big monument in Dallas, and these words are printed. But let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. A reminder of his ministry, because he was one that we can remember in our own history, who strove to bring about justice, who was a person who tried to bring about righteousness. All right? So again, these are judgment words. Words of judgment, not very happy. Israel is messed up. I think we can get a little bit of hope in Amos, though, from that last line. There's hope when there's justice. There's hope when there's righteousness. All right, we could keep going in Amos to the end, and it gets into a little more prosperity. That's enough from Amos for a little while. Next up, we're going to look at another prophet, someone that we ought to know. This is actually the longest book in the Old Testament. If you can find Isaiah chapter 5. Isaiah chapter 5. We're not
Is it
going
ahead or behind?
probably back.
It's ahead of Amos, so you've got to go backwards.
Chapter 5.
Chapter 5.
Wait, so it's going to be in the back of the book?
No.
No, because
Front of
this
the
one's Old Testament.
Open in the middle.
What? How? Isaiah 5 what?
Actually, I'm sorry, let's go to Isaiah 1. It's just a few more pages earlier. I'll give you the page because I want to get there.
Okay.
1093.
No,
Oh, there.
I was there before
I was there, yes.
No, you weren't. Liar.
Yeah, it was.
I don't lie, it's hospital.
Hey,
What was it?
1093. 1093.
A good trick, like if you open the middle of your Bible, it would usually end up in like Psalms or Isaiah.
Yep.
Just this.
Or Proverbs.
Hey!
What time is it?
Oh, there we go.
6:25.
Mine are.
7.
Right, who's it?
Are we gonna be reading the whole list?
All right. So we're going to see a similar pattern here. All right. Jairus, I think it's your turn.
Yes, sir.
Read.
Don't read so loud.
Read 1. Chapter 1, verse 1. Shh. Everybody listen up.
Chapter 1, verse 1 of Isaiah. The vision of Isaiah, son of Amos. Amos or Amos?
Amos, yeah.
Son of Amos, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem in the days of Uzziah, Uzziah, Jotham,
Ahaz,
Hezekiah,
Hezekiah.
Kings of Judah.
Okay. So here we have the introduction. We have words of. These are the words of Isaiah. Now with Isaiah, it's one book. 66 chapters. Like I said, it's the longest book in the Old Testament. And here, if you go back to your timeline, on page 30, we're not going to do that. But if you were to go back to that timeline, you would see 1st Isaiah and 2nd Isaiah. What we think is that Isaiah was probably a real person at some point. But the history contained in Isaiah probably is about 150 years of Israel's history. Isaiah is written before the exile, in the midst of exile, and after exile. And then it's all put together to where scholars think that we've actually got 3 separate kind of Isaiahs. We've got 1st Isaiah, 2nd Isaiah, and 3rd Isaiah. 1st Isaiah is judgment. 2nd Isaiah is hope for the return from exile. And 3rd Isaiah is kind of like this hope for the end times, when God's going to make everything right again. We call that eschatology. You may have heard that from Pastor Casey this past weekend. Eschatology, the end of things, all right? Kind of the consummation, the end of all things. So Isaiah is a bit longer. But we've got those still movements in there. We've got the introduction, we've got judgment, and we've got hope. All right, so let's turn to chapter 5, just a couple pages over.
Verse 1.
Oh, it's page
1101.
No, it's 1100. Yes, I got it first.
All right, so here, River's going to start for us. And we're going to read 1 through 7. All right, everybody follow along, verses 1 through 7. And here, Isaiah is using a metaphor to describe the people of God. So we'll read it and then we'll break it down a little bit. All right, River, go for it.
Yeah. Let me sing for my beloved, my love song concerning his vineyard. My beloved had a vineyard on a very fertile hill.
He dug it and cleared it of stones, and he planted it with the joyous vines. He built a watchtower in the midst of it, and he hoed out and wine vat in it. He expected it to yield grapes, but yielded wild grapes.
And now inhabitants of Jerusalem, and people of Judah, judged between me and my vineyard.
What more was there to do for my vineyard? But I have not done in it. When I expected it to yield grapes, why did it yield wild grapes?
And now I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will remove its hedge.
Hedge.
Okay, hedge. And it shall be devoured.
Devoured.
That's
fine.
Devoured. I will break down its wall, and it shall be trampled down.
I will make it waste. I shall not be pruned or hoed, and it shall be overgrown with briars and thorns. I will also command the clouds that they rain no rain upon it.
For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the people of Judah are his pleasant planting. He expected justice but saw bloodshed, righteousness but heard crying.
All right.
It says name.
So they spelled it wrong though.
So, here we have the song of the unfruitful vineyard. Vineyard, as the prophet says, is a metaphor for who? What's that?
Israel.
Israel.
Yeah, I said that.
Israel, people of God. So the vineyard is a metaphor for Israel. God, as the prophet starts, plants this vineyard. But what happens to the vineyard? What was the result?
It yields wild grapes.
All right, what do you think that means, wild grapes?
You can't make wine.
You can't
Bad
do-
grapes.
Okay, bad grapes.
Can't make wine.
Why would God describe the grapes as wild? What are some things that we've heard that may lead the prophet to call them wild grapes? Anybody?
Me?
No? Well, let's see if some other folks know. Why might the people be described as wild grapes?
Because they don't follow the Lord.
Okay, if they don't follow the Lord, what are some things that we've read about already? Told you this was kind of thematic.
Worshipping false idols.
Worshipping false idols.
Like that Baal.
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 What else did they do?
Some bad stuff.
Hey, bloodshed.
Okay, bloodshed.
Does that mean they kill people?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
that
they
includes
murder.
They broke the commandments.
Yes. They broke
the covenants. All right. All right. So God creates a vineyard, tries to cultivate a people, and it yield wild grapes. So verse 5, we kind of get some of that judgment. Yahweh is saying, and now I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I'm going to remove its hedge. It shall be devoured. I'm going to break down its wall. It shall be trampled. These are words of judgment. All right. And here we get in verse 7. Daisy, can you read that for us again? This is the important part that we need to hone in on. So everybody pay attention.
For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the people of Judah are his splendid planting. He expected justice but saw bloodshed, righteousness but heard a cry.
All right. So God expects justice, but what happens?
Bloodshed.
Bloodshed. Righteousness, but...
A cry.
Okay. So those are the same words that we just read in Amos. Let justice flow like waters, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. That's what God is looking for. And here, God expects justice, but what happens? Bloodshed. God expects righteousness, but heard a cry. Right? That's the cry of the people. Probably the poor people, the oppressed people, those who didn't have a place at the table. Right? So again, Isaiah gives us a similar pattern. Words of introduction, judgment, and we get to the hope at the end. Let's read a little bit about that hope right now in chapter 9.
106. Yep. First one there.
Chapter 9, verse 2. 1107. 1107.
How's our first?
Alright, everybody on 1107?
Can I read?
Everybody on 1107?
No.
It was me.
Hold on, we're going to pick up with Dalton.
1107.
Alright, so this is what we're going to...
Sorry, me.
Dalton, Shanna, Megan, alright? So y'all pick it up.
I'm dead.
Verse 2, start verse 2, Dalton.
Are you dying, Lord?
The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who lived in a land of deep darkness, on them light has been shined.
You have multiplied the nation, you have increased its joy. They rejoice before you as with joy at the harvest, as people exult when dividing plenty.
For the yoke of their burden and the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor, you have broken as on the day of Midian.
Eli. Verse 5.
Verse 5.
Verse 5.
boots of the trampling warriors, and all the garments rolled in blood shall be burned as fuel for the fire.
All right, everybody, these words may sound familiar. These next ones.
For a child has been born for us, a son given to us. Authority rests upon his shoulders, and he is named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace.
His authority shall grow and stop. Okay. His authority shall grow continually, and there shall be endless peace. For the throne of David and his kingdom, he will establish and uphold it with justice and righteousness. From this time onward and forevermore, the zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this.
All right.
No.
Oh, that's it.
Yes.
All right. Do those words sound familiar?
For unto us a child is born.
Yep. Where do we hear those words? Christmas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. For unto us a child is born, for unto us a son is given, and he shall be named Mighty Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. We're going to hear those words in a couple of weeks. All right, we get into the season of Advent, the season of preparation. Here we get, though it's not at the end of the book, we get an interlude, a burst of hope. All right? The people who have walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who live in the land of deep darkness, a light has shined. All right, there's words of hope. God speaking through the prophets to give hope to the people. And then we get that great prophecy that we read around the time of Christmas. So, we could read Jeremiah, we could read Ezekiel, we could read the prophets, and they would all follow this pattern. Words of introduction, judgment, and hope. And throughout the rest of the history of the Old Testament, Kings, Chronicles, and other places, things get pretty dark and bad. People fall away from God. There's judgment, but there's still that promise of hope. All right? We're going to break into small groups in just a second, but we're going to do a little bit different. I want y'all to think a little bit differently this evening. So we're going to keep that question that we've always had. Where have you seen Jesus? All right? But I want to think about, all right, where do we maybe see injustice? Where do we maybe get some of that judgment? Where are some unjust things happening? All right? Where do we see that in our world today? Also, where do we see hope? These things also happen in our lives. All right? So where do we see injustice and where do we see hope?